dear friends and colleagues. You know, with the pandemic coming to an end in certain parts of the world, we're starting to see adjustments and changes in the world of conference interpreting. There are places where convention centers are reopening, where live events are starting to take place, and where we are ready to go and serve again in person. This is really good, and it's what we were all hoping for. Unfortunately, there are still certain concerns. When it comes to the world of conference interpreting, we have to take into account certain risks that we will not have when we just go to have dinner to our next door neighbors, or when we are sharing some event with our family members. We know those people, we know if they have been vaccinated, we know if they are taking care of themselves. On the other hand, when we work at a conference setting, we will be dealing, by definition, with a lot of people who come from all over the place. At the beginning, perhaps most of them will be coming from your own home country, but from different regions. But in some cases and in some places, they are already coming from abroad. In these situations, we don't really know the conditions that they come from. We don't know what's the status on the vaccination campaign in their home countries, or what are the public health measures that they've been observing over there. At the same time, on occasion, we don't know everything that our boothmates or the technicians that we will be working with have been doing during the pandemic. Perhaps we will have a boothmate that is very close to us, and we will know that they've been vaccinated, that they've been observing public health measures during the pandemic, that they mask when they are in enclosed situations. However, we do not know all of our colleagues. We do not know all of our technicians. And it's a big risk to be sharing such an intimate space as an interpreting booth with another colleague who we don't know if it's a person that has been vaccinated or is a person that is going to put us at risk of a contagion. For this reason, I am concerned, and I have certain proposals that I am using when I've been asked to go back to work in person. First of all, we should be working in individual booths. That is, we will be doing team interpreting, but each one of the interpreters should be using a separate booth. That should be the way to go for now, because that will keep us all safer. It is true that in some situations it will be more difficult because of the setting of the venue, but this is something that we should demand. It is very important. In my case, I don't even get in an elevator with people that are unmasked unless I know who they are. I will not then be welcoming another boothmate that I don't know exactly who he or she is, or the technician into the booth. So we have to work individually. For this reason, the best booths are those that have a plexiglass or a glass in between booths, because that way we will be able to communicate with our boothmate very easily by posting notes, by body language, by certain signs that we will set so that we can communicate. That will be the ideal situation. But then again, there might be occasions where it is impossible because we have those solid, whether they are cement or they are wood interpreting booths, that make it impossible to see each other. In those situations, we have to come up with certain mechanisms to communicate instead of going back to sharing the same booth. Perhaps leaving the door of the booth open, or opening it when you have to communicate with your boothmate if they are really close to each other or next to each other. Maybe using some other means of communication, like having some kind of a chat in the computer so that we can text each other, or perhaps even see each other through a video communication. And the same thing goes for the technicians. Of course, there are technicians that are very respectful, and there are others that are respectful and mean well, but they have certain habits, such as going inside the booth when we make a mistake or an omission. We have all been in a situation where we forgot to open our microphone and we already started interpreting. Or perhaps we did not press the relay button and we are not using that feature. Some of the technicians in those cases just storm into the booth and they themselves push the appropriate button so that we're back in business. That is very nice when you don't have a pandemic, but now that we do, perhaps we have to work these things out ahead of time with the technician. Maybe they can show through the plexiglass or through the window in the front of the booth, if that's possible, a note or a message telling us what we need to do. Perhaps they can just open the booth door and from there show us a note, or maybe they can text us as well. But we have to be very careful with all these things. It is true that because the pandemic is coming to an end, also a lot of the events that are still being held at a distance are going now more and more to hubs instead of using interpretation from the interpreters' homes. This is really good because you will have the technical support and you will have a lot of other features, including less legal liability than doing it from your home. However, in these situations, the same thing should apply. There should be separate booths for each interpreter. If this is one of those hub settings where there are no booths, but there's just long desks, they should have plexiglass separating each one of the interpreters so that you can communicate and you are protected. Another thing I suggest is that sometimes you go to the hub and you see that they have used the 2 or the 4 contiguous booths. But you have many other booths across the room because they are situated or they are arranged in a horseshoe or on a square shape. In those situations, I could suggest that if you have a boothmate and you're going to be in individual booths, maybe your boothmate can sit across from you, and that way you can have all these visual communication features from one booth to the other. Of course, unless you have some monitor in between that is going to keep you from seeing your boothmate. But I think that's another good solution and a good way to work around these things. As far as the technician, it is much easier because in that situation, they can really just stand in front of you and from there communicate to you what it is that you missed or what you have to fix. Of course, there are still many events that will continue to be held remotely, especially in certain parts of the world where the pandemic is still is very strong. For those situations, I think that we have to be very careful also, and since we are talking about communication, I gotta tell you that to me, and this is from the moment that we started doing distance interpreting at the beginning of the pandemic from our own homes, I always felt that even with dedicated interpreting platforms, it is not enough for me to communicate by message, by text, with my colleague, with my boothmate. Just typing a message to me is not enough because you're still missing a lot of the body language of the visual cues that you need to have to do a better job. So I have always been a fan of having a back channel where you can see each other. I know that in those not specifically designed for interpreting platforms, people are using it worldwide. But even when you use a dedicated platform, I advise you to also have the back channel so that you can see by video what your colleague wants to convey to you. Yes, you're going to use the other features, you're going to communicate through the platform by message, but it's really good to be able to see your boothmate if the platform won't allow you to do that on its own. It is very important to have this second channel, whether it is WhatsApp or it's Skype or it's FaceTime or any other platform. I think that that's extremely advisable. For example, we know that the handover is crucial and that these dedicated platforms are really good at letting us do it smoothly. However, nothing beats the eye contact with your boothmate, even if it's on the screen, and the boothmate telling you to go ahead, to telling you everything is okay, to tell you to hold on because they want to finish that paragraph or that sentence or that idea. Nothing can substitute that. Let's say that you have a coughing attack. You start coughing and you need to drink water. Well, that's very difficult even when you can text each other on a dedicated platform. But if you can see each other, you can just go ahead and tell your colleague to take over for a second. It's just going to be 1 minute that you need to drink water. They'll see you drinking water. And after that, maybe perhaps 90 seconds or a minute later, you can just give the thumbs up and tell them or let them know that you're ready to take over your rendition again. That's really comfortable, that is really good, and that is really reassuring to us in the booth. So I would suggest you do that even if you continue to use the dedicated platforms when you do remote simultaneous interpreting. In other words, really take care of yourselves whether you work in the hub or at the venue, and please always find another way to communicate with your boothmate and the technicians that doesn't put your health at risk, at least for now, for the next few months. And if you continue to do most of your work from home, interpreting at a distance, please have a back channel so that you can have that visual communication with your boothmate or boothmates. That will help you a lot. You will notice the difference right away. At least that is my opinion. Thank you very much.